Good morning, students. Today we are going to learn about the spinal cord. Yesterday we learned about the midbrain, then pons verruly, that is the hindbrain, midbrain, hindbrain. The midbrain and the hindbrain. The hindbrain consists of cerebellum, pons verruly, medulla oblongata, and spinal cord. The fourth one is the spinal cord, which is comes under the hindbrain. The spinal cord is an elongated cylindrical part of central nervous system CNS, which lies within the vertebral canal and continues and it is a continuation of medulla oblongata. So the spinal cord is an elongated cylindrical part of the cranial nervous system, that is central nervous system. The central nervous system which lies within vertebral canal, which lies within the vertebral canal, backbone, that is the vertebral canal. So in the vertebral canal, the spinal cord lies, and this is the continuation of the medulla oblongata. The medulla oblongata will be here, and it is the continuation of the cord which enters in the backbone, that is the vertebral column. It extends from foramen magnum of the skull up to the lower border of L1 vertebra, and it is 45 centimeters long in length. It comes out from the foramen of magnum, that is the foramen which is present in the skull region. It comes out from the foramen of magnum of the skull and continue up to the lower border of L1 vertebrae, lumbar 1 vertebrae. It is 45 centimeters long in length. The cylindrical structure of the spinal cord is slightly flattened anteriorly and posteriorly. It is slightly flattened anteriorly and posteriorly. It is a connecting link between brain and other tissues. It is a connecting link between the brain and the body parts. It shows two enlargements in two regions for innervation of the limbs. It shows enlargements in the two regions, and they are cervical enlargement. The first one is the cervical enlargement, and the second is lumbosacral enlargement. The cranial and the cervical enlargement, the cervical spinal nerves arise from this place from a fluxus or network called brachial fluxus. The brachial fluxus is present in the cervical enlargement, and from which the spinal nerves arise, which innervate the muscles of upper limb. The muscles of upper limb are supplied by the nerves from brachial plexus, which is present in the cervical enlargement of the spinal cord. Second one is the lumbosacral enlargement. The lumbar and sacral fluxus innervate the muscles of lower limb. From the lumbosacral enlargement, the lumbar and the sacral fluxus arise, and which give the nerves or innervate the nerves in the muscles of the lower limb. So this is the lumbosacral enlargement, and this is the cervical enlargement. The nerves coming from this place, they are called as cervical and sacral plexus which enter in the lower limb, and here the nerves arise are called as spinal nerves arise from this place, and it is called as brachial plexus. It is a brachial flux which arises here and they enter in the forelimb. This is for the forelimb, this is for the hind limb. So, coming to the next point, the lowest part of the spinal cord is conical and is called as conus medullaris. It is a conical structure, it is called as conus medullaris. The conus continues below like a thin fiber called film terminally. Film terminally. This continues as a film terminally. The next point, the spinal cord is protected by the bony arch of each vertebra and closely surrounded three meninges or the layers and CSF, that is the cerebral fluid. The spinal cord is protected by bony arch of the vertebrae. The bony arch of the vertebrae is here. When the vertebrae is completely covered in the spinal cord, and there are three meninges or three layers and CSF, that is the cerebrospinal fluid. The outer dura mater, the three meninges or the layers are the outer dura mater, middle arachnoid matter and inner pay matter. The outer dura mater, here dura matter, arachnoid matter and the pay matter. So three layers are present on the spinal cord. The transverse section of the spinal cord shows that it is divided into two parts anteriorly by anterior median fissure and posteriorly by posterior median sulcus. So here anterior median fissure is present and the posterior median sulcus is present. This gives the division of the spinal cord. The spinal cord is divided into two portions by the fissures. The gray matter is situated internally, forming an H-shaped mass surrounded by white matter. This is an H-shaped mass which is a gray matter and it is embedded in the white matter. This is the white matter and this is the gray matter. So, it is H-shaped. The gray matter is H-shaped. At the center of gray matter, there is a central canal containing CSF, cerebrospinal fluid. So, there is a central canal here, the big central canal, continuous, which is filled with CSF, filled with cerebrospinal fluid. Cerebrospinal fluid. The spinal cord gives attachment on each side to a series of spinal nerves which arise by two roots, that is ventral nerve root or motor root, and the dorsal nerve root or sensory root. The dorsal nerve root are sensory and the ventral are motor. Nerve roots. The ventral nerve root is motor nerve root and the dorsal nerve root. This is the dorsal nerve root which is sensory in nature. So, the spinal nerves arise from the gray matter of the spinal cord and divide into two nerves first, the dorsal and the ventral nerve root. They two join together to form the spinal nerve. The spinal nerve is formed by the dorsal and the ventral nerve root which join in the gray matter. So, the fibers of the ventral nerve root carry motor impulses away from the spinal cord. The fibers of ventral nervous root, they are carrying motor impulses away from the spinal cord, and the fibers of dorsal nerve root carry sensory nerve impulses in the spinal cord. Both the ventral and dorsal nerve roots are joined to form spinal nerve which continue both motor and sensory fibers. So it is continued as a spinal nerve which contains the sensory and the motor nerve fibers inside. Just proximal to junction, the dorsal root is marked by a swelling called dorsal root ganglion. This is the dorsal root ganglion, which is just below the the emergence of the dorsal nerve. So, the dorsal root nerve, proximal to the junction of the dorsal root nerve is marked by a swelling called dorsal root ganglion or the spinal ganglion. It is also called as spinal ganglion. Spinal ganglion, dorsal root ganglion or the spinal ganglion. Each spinal nerve passes through the intervertebral foramen by the sides, ಎರಡು ಕಡೆಯಿಂದ ಹೊರಟೆ ಬರ್ತವು, and divide into two nerves called the dorsal ramus and the ventral ramus. They come out by the spinal nerve and divide into two nerves called as the upper one is called as dorsal ramus and the lower one is called the ventral ramus. The gray matter contains the cell bodies of the neurons that run up and down the cord. The nerve cell bodies are sensory neurons which receive impulses from the periphery of the body, lower motor neurons which transmit impulses to the skeletal muscles, interneurons which link sensory and motor neurons to form a reflex arch or the reflex arc. It also contains neuroglia, dendrites and axons. The gray matter contains the neurons, cell bodies of the neurons that run up and down in the spinal cord. The nerve cell bodies are sensory neurons, lower motor neurons, interneurons and neuroglia, dendrites and axons are also present in the gray matter. The white matter of the spinal cord contains three columns or tracts composed of bundles of myelinated axons. They are anterior, posterior and lateral. The sensory nerve fibers of the tract ascend towards brain and motor nerve fibers of the tract descend from the brain. It means that the white matter contains, the spinal cord contains three columns or tracts of bundles of myelinated axons. Bundles, they are the bundles of myelinated axons. The anterior, posterior and lateral, three bundles. So this is all about the spinal cord. This is the ideal structure of the spinal cord, wherein it gives rise to the dorsal nerve root and the ventral nerve root, and they join together to form the spinal nerve, which immediately divides into two: dorsal ramus and the ventral ramus. There is a grey matter and this is the white matter. And the spinal cord the body of spinal cord is divided into two portions by the fissures. They are anterior median fissure and the posterior median cerebellus here. And there is a central canal which is filled with CSF. The central canal is filled with CSF, that is cerebrospinal fluid. Now coming to the peripheral nervous system. Peripheral nervous system, I think tomorrow I will take this peripheral nervous system, which contains the spinal and the cranial nerves, the cranial and the spinal nerves. So I think this is enough today. That is the spinal cord, and tomorrow we are going to take the peripheral nervous system, the second one. The central nervous system, including the brain and the spinal cord, and the peripheral nervous system includes the cranial and the spinal nerves, and the autonomic nervous system contains the parasympathetic and sympathetic nerve systems, nerves. So this is all about today, that is the spinal cord. Thank you very much.